Ready to go?
Are we on? Okay.
Give me 1 second on this too.
All right.
Okay.
Say when. Okay, today is October the 31st, 2022. Now I call to order the Policy Committee meeting for the Belton ISD School Board of Trustees. A quorum is not present. And there are no public comments. Is that right, Connie?
Correct.
All right. So Matt, let's just move on to the agenda.
Sounds great. Trustees, thanks for being here tonight. We will work to move through this quickly. Board operating procedures, we started the discussion last time and we have some proposed edits for you, but they're in no way, shape, or form final hard opinions on any of these things. So we wanted to throw a few of these things out and engage in some discussion. This does not need to be adopted in November. We could adopt it in January if we needed to, but we wanted to open some discussions about some things. So we'll walk through some of those changes real quickly for you and then hit that if that's all right with you and let you discuss. So as you can see, we just updated our administration with the correct names that we have there. Page 4, where it says board meetings, we added a section there. We moved it from board committees and we just detailed what workshops is. That was in the committees section before and said any workshop involving a quorum of board members or more will be posted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. That is also policy that has been changed and updated recently in one of the TASB updates that y'all had. It just gave us more guidance on that. We were always doing those things, but we did change some policy recently on that. So this just clearly outlines that is a type of a board meeting, a workshop is a type of a board meeting, and that we're going to follow the Open Meetings Act regulations with any board meeting with a quorum present.
As you go through these, can we just, instead of you going through all the way, can we just stop? Whenever?
You're all good? Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, on that, depending on what happens later today, if we said any workshops or committee meeting involving, just add that, or committee meeting.
If you want to post the committee meeting, any committee meeting?
Yeah, any workshops or committee meeting.
Okay.
That's just a thought.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a quorum, it would have to.
Right.
Moving on, we go all the way back to the selection of board officers. I went through my notes and that opened up policy to see if we can align policy and language where it says selection of board officers on page 8. And what we landed on is officers may remain in the same office up to 3 consecutive terms. Don't know if that needs more elaboration, more clarification, but we feel that aligns with the policy that you have, and I think that 3 consecutive terms makes sense to me. It's in the same office, so it's not like, so you could be the board secretary for 3 consecutive terms, and then you could become the board president for 3 consecutive terms. So
That
is
makes more sense.
that,
Makes sense. Hey, Matt, go back to page 6.
yes, sir.
You added Board of Trustees, Board members, BISD.net, citizens make contact. That's an addition, right? I don't know, I've got it yellowed in my notes here.
Connie, is that an addition? Because I don't.
Where?
No? Page 6.
That was getting a little closer.
Citizens may,
Top half?
above quorum. That was-
Oh, it's on page 5 on our packet, so maybe.
Oh, page 5.
Okay.
All right.
What was the page?
Okay, it's like that far.
So it's this blue part down here,
Yep.
and that is a link, so that's a link, and I don't think that is a new link, that's been in our board operating
Okay.
procedures before, is that correct, Connie?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, just because it was a different color, I thought, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, because it's a link, it's a hyperlink.
Okay, good, all right.
So then, we move on to meeting minutes. We had this discussion the last time, so you can see some of the changes there under meeting minutes. We talked a little bit about some of the challenges that we have, and we tried to be clear that, hey, we're gonna do our best to get minutes done, but notes or minutes of committee meetings will be provided the following month. Like, I can't promise you we can turn those around in time for the action and on some of the stuff, so we tried to be really explicit about those 2 things that we talked about. Any questions on that? Hearing none, we shall move on to board committees, and this is one that I proposed And I know that there was some eyes looking at me like, oh, really, a third committee? What are you thinking there, Matt? So I proposed to y'all possibly having 3 standing committees: policy, budget, and facilities. We currently have policy, we currently have facilities. This would be adding a 3rd committee, which would be a budget committee. And then the board members would have the option each year which committee they want to serve on, with 2 trustees serving on each committee, not 3. So there would be no overlapping, no board member has to go to 2 committee meetings now. The board president is not formally on a standing committee, but may choose to attend any or all committee meetings. So wanted to throw that out there for your thoughts. I think I said the last time, I don't have a hard opinion on this, but I do know the big work of a board of trustees. Budget is a big piece of that. And we have heard from our trustees, and since I've been here, that a focus on budget might not be bad. And a more in-depth dialogue on budget might not be bad. So wanted to see what y'all are thinking on this one.
I think my biggest concern is that budget, typically, and we shared this when we did the committee presentation at TASB, and that typically we try to put people in the committees that are most passionate or at least most talented in that area. And if you go to budget, talking about a pretty selective knowledge set where I would want personally from the board our best minds in regard to numbers and fiscal things on that, which then pulls the talents that they already have from other committees.
Great.
So that's my concern, and that in effect spreads pretty thin. That's my thought. Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's similar feedback, right? Like, I'm thinking selfishly for a minute, where would I wanna be? I would wanna be on 2 of these. I'm not sure I wanna give one of them up.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm having a similar difficulty. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't prevent one of us with coordination from showing up to another committee meeting, as long as we made sure we didn't have 4.
Correct.
But yes, I'm in a weird spot where I'm trying to figure out which one of these would I wanna be on.
I had mentioned to Matt that I thought it would spread us too thin, not in the sense that it's given us additional work, but it would be 2 of us reporting to the 7, or 2 of us reporting to the other 5, about some significant issues that happen here. And I don't know if, I have some level of discomfort with that. Some of the budget stuff I think could be handled through workshops, perhaps. We do have a chief financial officer who has the expertise that we need for that, and then, but when I talked to Matt about it earlier today, when we had our meeting last time, I think he said finance, and I thought, finance, why do we need finance? And then today he said, well, it's budget, I didn't even catch it, and I hadn't even marked it out. But I can see why we would have you talk about budget, this is something that comes up. Obviously, it comes up when we approve the budget, but it gives us a better understanding. Now, do we have any say-so on what gets, how money is spent, Matt? I mean, what kind of issues would we talk about in a budget committee?
I think most of it is for future, kind of like facilities. It's not, in the facilities committee, the facilities committee shouldn't be talking about, did we get that door repaired at X school? That is not the role of the facilities committee. But the facilities committee should be talking about how we're planning for facilities for the future in Belton ISD, and what's the big work that we need to do. Same could be applied to budget. It's the forward planning piece of this that I think is important. I think given the nature of the role of a board and a trustee, budget is one of those that it's hard to get in depth in the time that you need to get in depth on as a board. And so I think it's not uncommon in boards across the nation to see budget committees. It's pretty common. But I don't necessarily know that we have to do that right now. But I think it's important for our board, as we do these every year, to think about how you organize yourselves and what the most important work is that you want to focus on as a board, because there are certain duties that are outlined in policy and law that says are the board's responsibility, and adopting a budget is one of those. And so I think just having a conversation on if that's something you want to explore is a positive thing for us.
The other thing is, I think there's a fine line between governance
Mm-hmm.
and management.
Absolutely.
So, a lot of things are obviously, most things are delegated to you, and even in terms of budget. You know, how things are spent, what we buy, what we don't buy. And of course, we wouldn't be getting into that in a budget committee, right?
It would be mostly probably looking at current status and talking about future planning. And as we see enrollment trends, facility needs, how we go about appropriate budget planning for 2, 3, 4 years out, as opposed to annually presenting to you all, here's the budget, here's what we think you need to know, ask your questions and then approve. This is a little more future forward in thinking.
I see that.
Yeah, and I think that the in-depth knowledge of board members, school finance is hard to figure out. And so
Of course.
I think if you think about the amount of time that we spend typically in these meetings, y'all are gonna laugh, typically, they last an hour. And so we meet 10 times over the school year, so policy committee, 10 hours during the school year approximately that you spend on policy. I think 10 hours on budget is a pretty reasonable thing to think about. Having 2 board members immersed for 10 hours in budget over the year makes sense. But again, that being said, I don't know if it's right for us right now. And I just wanted to make sure we had the discussion before we just continue to move forward.
I'm not completely opposed to it. I have a few concerns that I shared, but I also wouldn't want to move forward until we've gotten the pulse of the other board members.
Yeah,
Because
that's
they
what
don't,
I
they
was
have as
gonna
much say over this as we do.
That's right.
This is what I was thinking on the way over here, okay? I was thinking, okay, we need to we need to put it on the agenda and talk to the rest of the folks and see what their thoughts are on that. But we can still go ahead and make a change. And as I think back historically, when we first started these committees, and I don't think I've never missed a meeting for the policy committee. And historically, I think, I remember two times when we had a quorum. One was when we first started the policy committee. I think Suzanne showed up 1 or 2 months later. She was here for one of our meetings. And then Jeff came in one time, and he really wasn't over here, didn't participate in the discussions. He just sat and watched us. So out of, how long have we been doing this? 3 years now with the committees?
Just about.
3 years, okay. So in 3 years, we've only had a quorum twice. So as a practical matter, I don't know that there's a need to proceed. That's why I said in the beginning, that's why I made the suggestion for a committee. If we think there's gonna be 4, the president said, hey, I'm gonna attend, or if we go to 3 committees and Chris says, I wanna go to the budget, and then Janet says, I wanna go to budget, then you guys know to post it, right? So we could make the change and just leave it where we don't have to have these things posted every time, because as a practical matter, we've wasted our time. Let's say we've had 30 meetings, 28 there hasn't been a quorum, so why do it?
Yeah.
Why go through that process and create more work for you guys?
Totally. Here's what I would say on that. I think that's a good discussion for the board to have on that one. I wasn't here at the inception of these and to know why things were done the way they were done. Most committee meetings for boards across the state are not public meetings, and that's because they don't have a quorum of board members, so they don't post them publicly, etc. But that's the way we started out, and I think if we're gonna make changes into this, we do it through our board operating procedures. And so I think we gotta land wherever the board would want.
We can still record and post, record and post the recordings,
We could do that.
right? From a visibility standpoint.
Right. So my thinking with this would be, we
I'm
go,
gonna turn the ear down, I'm still listening.
okay, we go to, we're not gonna include the president in our board operating procedures. We just have 3 folks on each committee. We don't have to post them any longer in terms of the Open Meetings Act. And then on the agenda, perhaps in January, we discuss the budget committee and see if everybody else wants to go to 3 committees.
And then,
Because we would have to make the change anyway. If we went to 3 committees, there's not ever gonna be we don't have to post it because it's not, there's no Open Meetings Act requirement, right?
so I think we need to be able to put several examples together about what we talk about. What are some of the agenda items for that committee, right? So, we talked about in the past, what is fund balance sort of planning, multi-year fund balance planning look like? I know multi-year planning and multi-year funding is like a mess, right? Like, so there's a lot of question marks. It gets really loose and slushy, but but multi-year fund balance planning, multi-year forecasting from an expense standpoint, like things like we could potentially benefit a lot from doing some of that. Looking at, I'm assuming bond planning, right? At least the beginnings of it would probably live there, right? So I think there's lots of topics we could get into. We just, to Janet's point, we gotta make sure we get the right, at least base 2 people there.
And then once that happens, there's not gonna be a lot of moving around.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think about what I was saying is that the change that we could bring to the board, at our meeting, for next month, is that since we've only had it twice, where there's been a quorum, that we can just say, well, we don't have to worry about the Open Meetings Act, we just coordinate meetings amongst ourselves, right? And then if they wanna go to the 3, we won't need it anyway. But we bring the issue of, do we go to 3 at the next meeting, or perhaps in January or December?
I think from a transparency standpoint, if we go this route, I'd like to see us continue to record and post those.
Of course, we record these and we have to record the facilities, and we have to find out what they think about that.
We're doing it today. And that's for my benefit, right? And so, I mean, certainly transparency from a community standpoint too, right?
We're still gonna have minutes.
But if there's something going on in the facility meeting, I'd almost rather go back and watch the video than go back and look at the minutes, honestly.
Again, I think for me, the most important thing is that the board, and you, starting with you all as a policy committee, when we review these things, you think about how we organize our work as a board and as a team of 8, and we can do whatever's needed. Now, if you said we want to add a 3rd committee meeting and we want them all to be posted publicly and we want a formal meeting structure for that, I'd say I don't think we can do that as an administrative team. I think that's too much for us.
Well, does that work for you guys? Does that work for us?
Right, and so I'd be, trust me, I'd be fine in telling you all that too. In the way this works, in my mind on this, if you do go to a 3 committee structure, and you don't have to be posting them publicly, we could record everyone and still take some minutes and disseminate those to the board appropriately, but it's less formal than it is right now. But to Chris's point, we could also do same things, keep posting, keep videoing, keep posting those things to ensure the transparency. And we could even do that if it's just 2 committees and you decide not to post them publicly, to your point. If the board president, if we want to do our best not to have the board president participating in one of these meetings or having other board members attend, then there's no need to really post them publicly. So that's a decision that y'all get to make.
If the president ever did want to attend, all we gotta do is post it.
That's right.
Easy.
Easy fix.
Yep.
So, where are we? We discussed it at the next meeting, board meeting?
And I like your thoughts on that, maybe,
Okay.
in regards to the.
Tell me what you would like to see for a discussion topic. Would you like to see the discussion topic for the regular board be 2 or 3 standing committees? Or would you like the discussion topic to be posting public meetings and committee meetings and stuff?
I think both, because they're gonna go hand in
They
hand.
go hand in hand.
But then also flush out some of the, hey, here's what we think we would talk about in the budget.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Next section is communication on district business. So, the question was asked last time, why do we start this one with a question? And so you see we struck through that, and oh, it's odd, and I don't know exactly why that was like that. So I pulled up the only policy that I know of that deals with that, and this is policy BJA local. At the bottom of it, it says board and community relations, to maintain positive and professional working relationships with the board and the community. The superintendent shall, number one, keep the board informed of significant issues as they arise using agreed upon criteria and procedures for information dissemination. So in my mind, this helps us define what those agreed upon procedures are for information dissemination. The issue on these things is it has to be dealing with the functionality of the school district and be appropriate to have to contact you all about certain things. So in my mind, the situation that we deal with right now, if there's something that I know is gonna be of significant community interest that you need to know about, something that's going on in the school district, I call you. I say, here's what's happening, here's the situation, I let you know. But that's, as the superintendent, I sort through that stuff on a regular basis. I do not call you about everything. And I'll use an example. If we have a student that has a seizure in the school, I don't call and tell the board every time something like that happens. If we have a student who has a significant medical issue, there's EMS responding and we're sending that student to EMS, and I think you should know about it, then I do. And so there's discretion that I have as a superintendent to tell you what is happening in the school district and what goes on. So that was the reason for the red parts below.
Madam, the second bullet point after the word safety.
Yeah.
I just wrote a sentence here. I just said the timeliness of the communication would depend on the importance of the issue to the function of the district.
Okay.
Now, you can add or not add that. I mean, that was just something, the first thought that came to my mind after the word safety.
So tell me what that means in your words, in your own words.
I mean, obviously, if it's of grave importance to the district, the function of the district, then you're gonna let us know right away. As opposed to 4 or 5 hours later.
And that's not covered in the first bullet where it
Well,
says.
maybe, that's why I said you can take that or,
Gotcha.
um,
I think that's what I was trying to get at in the first
Okay.
bullet. I moved that up.
yeah,
Because
well,
I-
yeah. I don't wanna be verbose about it, but,
Yeah,
Because it could vary, depending on the circumstance.
yeah.
very much so. And honestly, if you're in the middle of a severe situation, then I'm not gonna be calling you right
No, I don't
until
want
that's
you
over.
to-
So.
Oh, you're calling,
Yeah.
call Chris about this.
If you think that first bullet works, then we can use that, or I can add another line, whatever works.
You know, that's just the first thing, I try to write down the first thing that comes to my mind.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So you can add it or not add it.
Okay.
I mean, it's,
Any other thoughts?
District liability, staff or student risk or safety. We also talked about items of significant community interest, right? So that might not fall into those categories.
Yeah, so it might be a separate bullet, and like a third separate bullet that is about items of significant community interest.
staff,
The grocery store list.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, such information could be one of the district liability staff, student risk, safety, or of what?
Other items of significant community interest.
Just added to that.
Yeah.
Where's Ty gonna get stopped in the produce department?
I'm good with any of that. Again, for me, I was just trying to clean up that question
Yeah,
and
yeah.
make sure that we
Yeah.
were clear.
I was kinda wondering why that was there.
Everything good?
Yes.
Okay. Then we go over to page number 10 and 11, where it says citizen request complaint to individual board members. This again, it was a topic that we talked about a little bit. We were a little hesitant about, part of your role is representing the community, and so complaints are gonna come to y'all. It's not that you solve them all, but you have to be able to hear those complaints. And we talked about taking step 5 out, so we crossed step 5 out on page 10, and I added that red paragraph up there. What are your thoughts?
My first thought was, well, what am I supposed to do other than that? I mean, how much of a discussion can I have with Mr. Smith that lives down the street from me?
Yeah. It's my dad, I'll tell you, keep it minimal. Just kidding, Dad.
Well, and in practicality, the way this is played out is I always do recommend, and I ask if they've done that, if they've taken those steps, and if they say yes, then I will usually intervene in some way, help them, facilitate, advocate for them. Otherwise, until they've taken those steps, they gotta go back. They have to try. Unless there's some extenuating circumstance in which they cannot.
But looking at that red, the language in red, does that allow you to do that? That was my question.
Right. I think so.
Because, here's how the referral should happen, right? So if you're gonna refer somebody to Mike,
Yeah.
right, usually that referral will be followed up with, hey, Mike, heads up, like, I referred so-and-so to you, and here's what I told him to do, and, whatever, right? So it's not just a cold handoff. Hopefully not, right?
Right.
It does give the two choices. You
It
will
does.
recommend the appropriate level or refer the matter to somebody, superintendent of schools, or it could say, or appropriate administrative.
So if someone complains to Chris Floor, then all Chris can do is one of two things. Well, basically one thing. He looks at 1 through 4 and says, this is what you gotta follow. That's it. You can't discuss anything else.
Is that what this says? I don't know if that's what this says.
Yeah, I think that's what it says.
Because it says, or will refer the matter to the superintendent of schools.
Right. So I'm saying you got two things, but you can't
But that's what I
discuss.
do today. We refer, I refer
Yeah.
it to the appropriate level of, where it should go.
Right,
Um,
right. But you can't enter into a discussion about the merits.
We shouldn't be doing that today anyway.
I'm sorry?
We shouldn't be doing that today.
Right, that's true. True.
My concern is, I just wanna make sure that this doesn't write us out, right? Like, from a community, approachability standpoint,
There you
right?
go.
So that's my concern.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm asking you.
Well, so number 5 though, okay, great. So when they emailed us, well, in all practicality, what happened when they emailed all of us? Well, not all of us replied, because we can't, because of an open meeting act, potential violation there. We would get it to the superintendent or superintendent and, right, whoever it is, and they would respond, right? So to some extent, the red is actually sort of codifying, if you want to call it that, like what we actually do today. Because we can't reply to all, in that situation.
And of course, all these complaints don't just come through email. They come through
Right.
personal relationships, they come
Sure.
through a text
Sure.
message, they come through all kinds of ways.
Okay.
A Facebook message,
Chris, I was asking you a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I know, but.
So, I'm good with it.
Again, I don't have a hard line on any of it, we were just trying to hit target, y'all talked a little bit about. The one thing that I will note that I put in there, I did put that last line in there, in such situations, the superintendent of schools or designee will respond in lieu for the trustee. So let's say Janet gets hit with a complaint about something, she refers it to us. I'm not expecting Janet to go follow up with that parent at that time. We just want to be really clear that community members, you're not gonna have a board member follow up with you on every individual concern that they bring. as an administrative staff, we'll try and make sure our board members are looped in on how we followed up and know what we're doing about it, but it's the administrator's responsibility to follow up. So
But
that's,
then there are cases where I've said to, you know, Joe or Jane citizen, hey, you know, I've referred you to here, and I have let that person know that you're coming.
And I think that's covered here. I mean, the
Yeah.
only other thing you could add is refer the matter to the superintendent of schools or the appropriate administrator or administrator. It's the only, that'd be my only other suggestion.
You know, should the if be a when?
when a trustee,
Yeah.
fine with me.
Yeah, that's, we're told, you know, through some sort of training we received, that you should not discuss the merits of the issue with someone,
Right.
because, you know, it's gonna recuse you from a level 3.
Right.
So you're, you know, yeah, you wanna be involved, as you said, community involvement, it kinda takes you out of that. The process that you have in place takes you out of it, right?
Yeah.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can take that first word and change that to a when, and then after superintendent of schools, where it says we'll refer the matter to the superintendent of schools, I'll put in parentheses or appropriate administrator for an administrative response. Does that work?
It could even say and or appropriate administrator.
Y'all good with that?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, I think that, so page 13, Connie put in another training line,
All right, so that-
and that was it.
that's it.
Anything on board operating procedures? Again, this is something annually that you have to go through and revisit your board operating procedures. Anything on board operating procedures that you would like us to address? Excellent. What we will do is we will have a board report item for our November meeting for us to talk about the 3 meetings type of a discussion. I'll figure out how to word that appropriately. I'm assuming you're okay if we don't bring this forward for a second reading right now. We can do that in December, after we get more feedback from the whole board and stuff on stuff.
That'd be great, because then we would start a new year, however we're gonna start it.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Now, we don't have another policy committee meeting. No, this is our last policy committee
We can't have a
meeting.
second reading then.
So, we can.
We can,
We
that's
can,
right.
our policy allows us
Yeah.
for it, but I wanna make sure you're all okay with that. So basically what we would be doing is getting feedback from whole board, seeing if it's, you know, if people are okay with it and bringing it forward at the next meeting. We can have a discussion about it if we need to.
Then we'll approve it in December.
Right,
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
because at this point, I think we've run around the block, they need to talk now. Okay.
All right. Next thing up, we have TASB policy review for local policies to address. First reading, we got DEE local compensation and benefits, expense reimbursement. Which one of our admin team is that? Yeah, I imagine, come on up. I was trying to.
Deanna's world.
Yeah.
John Charles.
Any questions for, before you even got up there, I should have said, are there any questions for Melissa on this one?
What is the per diem allowance?
Right here. So it's $48 a day, and you get $11 for breakfast, 13 for lunch, and 24 for dinner. That's what we're not dropping. And then for federal funds, you really want to have that documentation for audit purposes, so it's not, you don't get a per diem.
Yeah, so you just want, I think, the ability for people to have to claim when a meal is provided as part of the event, so it doesn't get included in the per diem. Right, so if you go to an event and lunch is provided, but yet,
Yeah, and I think that's taken into consideration
Yeah.
when they're approved to travel.
Yeah.
okay,
I will say, when I saw this earlier today, I was thinking, I did just spend $15 at Chipotle for a burrito. Only a burrito. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
Anything else for Melissa?
That's it for sure.
All right,
It's easy.
sounds great.
Next.
EHBF local. Dr. Lovesmith, any questions for Dr. Lovesmith on this one?
Gosh, this one's easy.
This one's easy.
This one's easy. We literally just changed the contact person. It was the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. We had some conversations internally, and we're recommending it be the Executive Director of Special Programs. This is regarding special ed classrooms. That way she's the first in the know, and then she would either work with the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, our Executive Director for Student Services, or the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. And so we just felt like it's gonna ultimately involve a lot of people, but she would be the best contact to start with.
So the red lines, red words were what TASB recommended. The blue ones we're saying we want to be more specific. We don't think it should go to our Assistant Superintendent of Operations. We think it should be Executive Director of Special Programs. Is that correct?
And TASB actually was only, made some incorrect changes. It was Student Services, and they were gonna add the word operations in it. Our policy already had Student Services, but then when we really looked at it, we said, we think it's Executive Director. I did look at some other policies from some larger districts. They actually don't even include a central office person. They leave it with the principal reviewing, but we felt like with the special ed classroom, that way if it's our Executive Director of Special Programs, that's the first to know. They can also make sure everything's taken into account from a services standpoint for special ed. That's it.
Good deal.
Excellent.
Any questions?
No twist for you.
All right. FJ local student fundraising. Anything for Melissa on student fundraising for FJ local?
Just hold on. I don't think you have to come.
I don't think.
Why the change?
Melissa?
TASB recommended it.
Other than that, I mean, it's,
Yeah, I think they're just trying to give us a little more flexibility in the policy, because we have administrative procedures that kind of dictate, the fundraising activity. So, of course, all that's in our policies and procedures in the business offices. I do plan on in the future building a more robust activity fund, manual and process. So that is forthcoming, but right now that's being addressed in our.
I did look at, DEC local, the compensation benefits, policy, and that definition of, let's see, immediate family is quite comprehensive. This one here just includes spouse, child, parent, or sibling. That one's like
Right,
grandparents and uncles and aunts. It just has a bunch of folks in it.
yeah, and with that though, you wanna be careful so we're not gifting public funds. So
Okay.
I think we need to keep that very narrow in scope.
Yeah, because they say here in the comment, it says, look, if you want to add that, if you want to use that definition, I guess you can, but you guys wouldn't recommend that, right?
No,
Okay.
would not, no. And in fact, we would probably put more guidelines around, fundraising for families.
Okay. That's the only question I had was about the immediate family.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
FDA and FDB local
Oh, this is super easy.
are Mike Morgan, just for a couple of quick updates on those.
Yeah, and I think this is probably since we started committee work, I think this is the fourth time we've been back to FDA and FDB, but this was something that, as we talked with TASB, and we had already made one change as a result of the policy review, and that was to make sure that we had the language that aligned with our district of innovation language, to make sure that where transfers were specifically mentioned in there. We also wanted to, as special situations come up, where we don't have to go in and tinker with policy every time. So when you open, when you change attendance boundaries and you decide how you're gonna do grandfathering and things like that, when you start to offer standalone programs at certain schools where kids from other attendance boundaries may want to transfer in and go to those. Having something in there that the language that's in the transfer agreement and application is, it can be binding by policy so that we don't have to go in and put those specific things that may change over time. So you renew attendance boundaries, that's good, that may impact transfers for 1 year, but it wouldn't be every year after that, but you wouldn't want to change your policy every time that you have to change it.
So in other words, you might add or subtract some transfer, language
In the agreement, in the application.
without having to come back to the board every single
Yes.
time.
Yes. Or have something in your practice that's not mirrored in policy, or that's not covered in policy. That would be the biggest, danger to me we put something in a transfer agreement, but it's not backed up by policy, and then if things go haywire, we can't back it up because it's not in the policy.
I feel like we have to review, we then need to review the application,
Absolutely.
right? Because,
Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
yeah, because otherwise, I mean, we've got a policy.
And I will say, the current transfer guidelines pretty much mirror policy. I mean, it goes into a little more explicit detail, like which campuses were closed due to near at capacity. Really, that's the major difference between the policy and the transfer guidelines, is it tells what, because the policy allows us to close campuses that are at or near capacity. The guidelines tell us which campuses are closed based on current enrollment.
So
So it would not be the same thing.
the application would come to us once a year then?
We have an application window once a year, so we could just get into a rhythm where, whether it be through full board or through policy committee, y'all can, before those go out to the public, y'all can review and see if you have any questions or thoughts, and then, give us feedback before we open that transfer window. And we've kind of gotten into a mid-February to mid-March application window, and then try to let families know by mid to late April if they've been accepted as transfer or not.
You know, I know we worked on this 2 or 3 times. How's it work?
It's worked well.
How'd it work out this year? Pretty good?
As long as we have their review.
Janet?
So maybe we'll bring forward that application just to discuss at a policy meeting. It's not that we would need board approval for it, but just to inform you all at a policy committee meeting, and we'll go from there. Does that work?
Wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
I just want to be clear that concludes our agenda in 44 minutes. So
Any issues and concerns for future agenda? We've already talked about those. Anything else? We stand adjourned. Trick or treat back.
let me shut this off real quick.
Our next meeting is January, I allow myself a recess at
Ready to go?
Are we on? Okay,
Give me 1 second on this too.
all right.
Okay.
Say when. Okay, today is October the 31st, 2022. Now I call to order the Policy Committee meeting for the Belton Independent School Board of Trustees. A quorum is not present. And there are no public comments, is that right, Connie?
Correct.
All right. So Matt, let's just move on to the agenda.
Sounds great. Trustees, thanks for being here tonight. We will work to move through this quickly. Board operating procedures, we started the discussion last time, and we have some proposed edits for you, but they're in no way, shape, or form final hard opinions on any of these things. So we wanted to throw a few of these things out and engage in some discussion. This does not need to be adopted in November. We could adopt it in January if we needed to, but we wanted to open some discussions about some things. So we'll walk through some of those changes real quickly for you and then hit that if that's all right with you and let you discuss. So as you can see, we just updated our administration with the correct names that we have there. Page 4, where it says board meetings, we added a section there. We moved it from board committees and we just detailed what workshops is. That was in the committees section before and said any workshop involving a quorum of board members or more will be posted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. That is also policy that has been changed and updated recently in one of the TASB updates that y'all had. It just gave us more guidance on that. We were always doing those things, but we did change some policy recently on that. So this just clearly outlines that is a type of a board meeting, a workshop is a type of a board meeting, and that we're gonna follow the Open Meetings Act regulations with any board meeting with a quorum present.
As you go through these, can we just, instead of you going through all the way, can we just stop whenever?
You're all good? Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, on that, depending on what happens later today, if we said any workshops or committee meeting involving, just add that, or committee meeting.
And if you wanna post a committee meeting, any committee meeting.
Yeah, any workshops or committee meeting,
Okay,
that's just a thought.
okay.